Good afternoon, good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. This is our Empire Builders webinar series. I think this is the fifth one that we've done. So we're cruising right along on this series, and everyone seems to enjoy it a lot. So we're happy. We have some a really great panelist today. So I'm excited to have this conversation. Few housekeeping items before we get started. I mentioned this at the beginning, but for those of you that just joined, we'll send out this recording at the end. So if you do have to jump off a little bit early, no worries. We'll send it out usually a day or two afterward. The full recording will be emailed to you. And then throughout the conversation, again, there's a Q&A section at the bottom. So if you have a question that comes up, feel free to type it in there. I'll be keeping an eye on it throughout. And then if we don't get to it within the conversation, then we'll save maybe 10 or 15 minutes towards the end. So don't be shy, put your questions in the chat. All right. And then before we get started, I want to just talk a little bit about ApplePie Capital. I know many of you on this call already know these things, so I'll try to go fast. But who we are 100% franchise focused lender. We have done work with over 200 brands over the last 10 years since 2015, secured over $3 billion in loans to franchisees. We only do franchising, and so we have dedicated relationship managers. They understand your brand, the lending environment, and they really do a personalized approach and more of a one-on-one consultation just to understand your growth plans fully and give you customized financing options that meet your specific needs. We have ApplePie Core Loan. That's our conventional loan product. And then we also have a network of lenders where we do SBA financing, equipment loans, remodel loans, et cetera. So really something for everyone. All right. In case you don't know who I am, I'm Samantha Holt. I have been with ApplePie Capital since 2017, so for about 8 years now. I manage our team of relationship managers and just overall sales operations at ApplePie. Joining me today is Rylan Miller. He is a multi-unit franchisee with Tropical Smoothie Cafe. I've worked with Rylan many times over the years, I think starting when he only had maybe 10 units. So he's come a very long way in a short period of time. Rylan, do you want to go ahead and give yourself a quick introduction?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Samantha. So I started with Tropical Smoothie in 2014. Grew that over the years to 40 locations, developing another 25 more within that brand. I'm a franchisee in a couple other brands, or one other brand, 810 Billiards and Bowling's family entertainment brand out in the Greenville, South Carolina, and actually franchising a couple of things. One is very new to market, but it's an entity called Trust Thy Barber. It's a boutique barbershop. And also an investor in some other things, medical sales and device company, most recently, and yeah, that's about it.
Awesome, thank you. I knew there was a lot I was missing there. So listen, 40 units. There's probably a lot to talk about in this call, but let's start from the beginning and then kind of work our way through. So you developed your first 2 units, I think one at a time, using SBA loans. And then I think you had an opportunity after that to accelerate your growth a bit and purchase 3 units at a time. How did you approach that first acquisition in terms of assessing whether it was a good opportunity or not? And what tips do you have for handling the conversations with sellers, what to look for, negotiating the price, all of the things that go into buying existing units?
Yeah, that's a good question. So assessing, I think the most important thing looking at an acquisition is, so for me, we had 2 locations open, and a 3-unit acquisition had come up in a different city, but relatively close. And I looked at the opportunity favorably because the sales were there. So I think the brand at the time was maybe doing 800,000 average unit volume, and they were beating that a little bit. They were closer to the $1 million average unit volume, but they were bringing home no money in terms of EBITDA. So to me, it was kind of just a simple infrastructure change within the units to adjust to Your labor, your variable costs where you can, your fixed costs are kind of set, but the labor cost of goods side of it. So implementing an inventory program and then going forward with that. So assessment, what if it had been the same deal but not as profit or not as much sales, I would have let it go. But because the sales were there, we can kind of prove through the model that it was just a simple management change. So my assessment is typically something like, are the sales there? Yes. Okay, then proceed forward. If the sales aren't there, it's a harder thing to get financing for, especially, and even on the EBITDA side, like we approached it with a seller note for those units. We couldn't, just there was no profitability in what they were asking for. We were able to kind of massage the conversation with the seller to demonstrate, hey, what you have can be profitable. We think that we can demonstrate over time that we'll improve the profitability here, but you can't expect me to take what you have and go get a loan for it from a bank. So navigating that conversation with the sellers can be difficult, but don't be afraid to do it. It's just one of those kind of hard conversations that you'll have to have with them.
Sure. And how did you, and I don't know how much you can say about terms or anything like that on the seller note, but how do you, was that a tough conversation in terms of they maybe didn't want to carry the note, and how do you decide on term length and things like that? Like,
yeah. So I kind of structured it around what I knew to be a good refi term. So I knew I needed at least 6 months of operations to refi with institutional money. I asked for a 2-year note on 10-year money. So I asked for a 2-year note with a 10-year amortization. So the payments were manageable, but he also could see the light at the end of the tunnel that in 2 years he would have his full amount of dollars in his pocket. And we helped him feel good about it by showing, hey, look, on my 2 locations that I have now, this is what we're doing in terms of profitability. You got to be careful with that, because they'll try to say, well, you should buy mine for X since you do X. It's like, no, you're not doing that. So I'm sorry, but I'm gonna be the one that has to put the work in, and there's no guarantee. So it's a little bit of like a dance, this dance that you have to do. If they need it demonstrated, hey, here's how I perform, and this is why I'll be able to do that with your stores to get them comfortable about the seller note. You can go that route, but no, that could be a double-edged sword.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's interesting. I'm not sure if you did this on purpose, probably, but we actually, as a lender, will advise people to do it that way for a number of reasons. One, you mentioned, it helps the seller get comfortable, because then they can see the light at the end of the tunnel. They're not signing up for 5 or 10 years before they get fully paid. But it helps you too as a franchisee, because it makes SBA eligible. You can refinance that loan with the SBA, right? Where
Yeah.
if it was a full 10-year term, if there's no balloon payment, then it's not as easy to refinance with the SBA. You might find another lender to do it, but it's safer to know that at least you've got that network of options behind you if you structure it with the balloon payment.
Yeah, exactly. And that was, I mean, at the time we were just looking at it was kind of brand new. I mean, it really was brand new into franchising. We have been doing it for a few years. The opportunity presented itself, but we were looking at any way possible to get new money from different lenders. And at the time, they didn't have 100% financing back then, like these equipment vendors do now. So it was either conventional money, 20% down, or 10% down with SBA, but they have serious limitations with it. I think right at the time you guys were doing that recap and grow program.
Yeah. Yeah. Probably. I think you came to us after this next
Yeah.
point in time that I wanted to talk to you about a little more too. So I think, so you get those 3 units. So now you've got 5, right?
Mhm.
And then things are going pretty smooth. You're ready to grow more. And this is the point where I think, as lenders, I know we start to really zoom into someone's operations, because we know that once someone gets to 4 or 5 locations as a single operator, it's no longer reasonable for you to be in the store every day. You can't be in every location as much as you need to. So that's where I think there's definitely a shift from owner operator to more of a CEO type role. And it can be a turning point for a lot of franchisees, and whether it makes or breaks you, right? So
Yeah.
For you, you had 5 units. Now you get an opportunity, I think, to purchase 5 more at that point, right? Through another acquisition.
Yeah, that's correct.
So what types of things did you do leading up to that to make sure you were in a good spot to go from 5 to 10 units? And what were some of the major operational changes that had to happen?
Yeah, so the changes were mostly staffing above restaurant staffing. So, we played around with a lot of different things. And when the brand was doing $800,000 average unit volume, it made sense to do some of these other tactics, like have a GM that looks over 2 locations, um, or have like high paid crew members that are like, kind of like shift leads, assistant managers, or something like that. The problem is, like, if one of those people leave, then now you're stuck holding the bag on 2 stores and you don't have leadership in either. But you try to make it, because 800,000 isn't, it's not you're not bringing a whole lot of money home after debt service. So as the brand starts to grow, like where it is now, $1 million average unit volume, what we shifted to was manager run stores and then district managers within each individual region. You might be asking yourself, well, how far is a region? That was, something we struggled with. Like, if we're in Greensboro and Raleigh, can we have a district manager do both? And it really depends on how many stores they have, at least in my opinion, and how good they are as a coach. Because we expect our district managers to kind of be shoulder to shoulder with the managers and the crew, teaching them, instructing them, leading them, showing them how to deliver great customer service, how to deliver improvement on the cost of goods and your labor. And if you give them too far of a distance, it's really they spend a lot more road time than they do in the actual stores. So spend a little bit more dollars on. So if you're in 2 different regions, have a district manager in one, have a second in another. So spend a little bit more dollars up front on that. In my opinion, it'll save you more up front to just have one. It'll save you more in the long run to have 2. And it kind of goes to the same thing. Like, if you lose that one district manager, now you're holding the bag for 2 regions. So one of the main things we did right away was start backfilling the above restaurant leaders.
Makes perfect sense. How do you, like, when it comes to just above and beyond the actual human the number of bodies, right? How do you keep them motivated? How do you make a culture that makes people wanting to come to work every day, that keeps them close to the numbers and sort of managing the units in the way that you would manage them if you were there?
We have a really good bonus program and incentive program. So we like to get like one of the things that we do. So it's 2 things, maybe 3. I guess I'll start with the big one is really if individuals, especially above restaurant, or managers that want to be above restaurant, know that you're an organization that's growing. What we found is it's been very powerful for them, because they can see the light at the end of the tunnel in terms of growth and career opportunity. It's either going to be with you as an individual or some other organization that's doing that, if it's within the food industry. So the culture of, hey, we're growing, we're going to do this, and we're going to do this really, really well. And the people that are showing themselves at the top will have the opportunities to move forward or move on to above restaurant roles and beyond. I think it tells a pretty powerful story, and we've had a lot of success with that. So that's the kind of the first thing. The second part is a really good bonus structure. So we have some standards that we set for crew labor, cost of goods, which is really an inventory program, and guest service, so guest satisfaction. We've added in some ticket times and stuff like that as some kickers. But what we've found is that giving them a percentage of the beat. So we have a standard. If they beat the standard, then we share what the beat is with our managers, district managers, and then our administrative operation leaders. And it's this year we actually implemented that about 12 months ago. So we're almost on a full year, and it's been really powerful. We've given out more bonuses now than we ever have, but we've also made more money because those individuals are managing the variables very, very well.
Interesting. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. That was one of the questions that we had, and I think you just answered it. It was, do you have any profit sharing or have a bonus structure for your DMs or managers? So I think that that was a timely answer. Really quick, I want to answer I want to move on from buying and talk more about selling, but there was a question in the chat about what EBITDA multiple was used for the acquisition of 3 units. And I don't know that there was much cash flow there, but can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah. So today, I mean, everybody's going to be asking 5 today. I think you can get away with 4. It's also going to depend on if they have a broker. So if they don't have a broker, you might be able to get into the high 3s, 3.8 or something like that. But, just know that if they have a broker, they're probably like that person's probably going to be getting 8 to 10%, which makes negotiation with the seller a little bit more difficult. Picture you got a $4 million 5-unit sale. The broker's his intention is to get as much dollars as he can for the seller, but also knowing, hey, that person's on the back end, they're going to get 8%, which makes so if the seller can walk away up on the top end with the asking price, they're going to get 3.6 is probably the best they can do. So anything below that is gonna it's gonna deter sellers from doing it. So with that said, if it's broker represented, you're probably going to see a 4.2. If it's you could probably get into the high 3s to very, very low 4s with non-broker sale. If it's a single location, you're looking at like 3.5 or something like that, 3.5 to 4.
Got it. And for you, thanks, Rylan. That's helpful. On the 3 that you purchased, that was not necessarily structured as a multiple of EBITDA, right? Because you said there wasn't a ton of cash flow to work with.
Yeah, there wasn't. So we assigned a fixed value to each location. It was, I don't want to say what it was because I think I have an NDA with that guy if I remember correctly, but it was very low. It was considerably less than what it would cost to open a new location. But that's all dependent on if they have debt, what it costs them to get into and stuff like that. So, but we were able to work out a very, very favorable term.
Got it. Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. We were getting a lot of questions, so I wanted to touch on a couple of them while we were on this topic. All right. So we talked a little bit about buying. Let's talk about selling a little bit. So how do you evaluate your own units when you see that maybe there are some that are underperforming or struggling a little bit? And what factors do you use to determine whether you should put more time, energy, money into the unit versus selling it, or even making the decision to close a unit if you've ever had to do that?
Yeah, I haven't closed a unit, but I would consider it if it was the end of the lease. We've sold 3 since I've been in operation. The reason is because I was probably too late to do it. The 3 that we sold, 2 of them were part of acquisitions that were just 3 or 4 unit deal, and that one came along with it. So you don't have a choice; you got to buy it. And then my assumption is always, hey, I think we can improve operations here. And a lot of times that doesn't happen, or we improve operations, but it's just not the right real estate. So you're stuck with this this loser basically within your portfolio. And for me, I struggled. I mean, I don't know exactly. We talked about this before, Samantha, but maybe as ego or something, but thinking unit count is what's important. And so I struggled, but I took probably way too long to sell off the 3 that we had that were very low performers. I think if you're just honest with yourself about are they ever going to come for full circle? My answer to that one, the 3 that we sold, was that no, they're not. They're probably in the wrong location. They were never, or they need to be moved across the street, and there's nothing available over there for the foreseeable future. So to me, it's just assessing like how does it perform within your portfolio? Because to me, it's better if you got 10 stores doing $7 million in profit to the bottom line. That's way better than having 40 million doing the same. I mean, so if you can reduce the amount of locations but still maintain your profit as increasing, then you're better for it. So get rid of the dead hangers. If you're doing $5 million in profit, you got 3 that are losing 50,000. a piece, and you're gonna net another 150 at the end of the day. So that's how we looked at it.
Makes sense. And I think it's probably easier to assess that when you've got other units to benchmark against. Like the more
Yeah.
units you have, you can kind of say, well, if we're copying and pasting and it's not working in this demographic area or whatever the case may be, where that unit's not performing, then you can say, okay, we'll give it this much time and then make a decision. Where it's probably harder for franchisees that are in that 1, 2, and 3 units open, right? And they really sort of need to hang on to it's harder to close, I think, at that point. And so in
It is. Yeah.
that situation, would you recommend, like, when do you know when to cut the cord? Like, do you reach out, do you leverage the brand or your lenders, things like that? Would you recommend starting there and then seeing how things?
Yeah, like that's a good question. If you're a lower count, I would
Yeah.
say if you let me make up a scenario. So if I had two really good performers, or at least brand average or above, and I had one that was a lagger, and I would ask myself the question first, will it ever get better? If the answer is probably no, I picked the wrong site, then I would look at selling it. And there's certain groups out there you can sell the low performers to. And you can get a couple $100,000 for them. It won't be what you put into them, but you can also write off the loss too. So that can benefit you from a tax perspective. But yeah, approaching the brand,
Sure.
you can usually approach the brand about who, because again, you hire a broker, it's going to cost more, so they can probably put you in contact with people that are interested in buying units that they can look to improve.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. Um, when it comes to, I mean, this is sort of in line with what we're talking about, looking at your numbers, right? So when it comes to financial reporting, and just reviewing your numbers, when at with this many stores, how close are you to your financial reporting? How often do you look at it? And what's your primary focus when you're reviewing your P&Ls, et cetera?
Yeah, so I mean, primary focus, we've shifted a little bit over the years. Primary focus is labor, cost of goods. Those are your two big drivers in profitability. From the onset, making sure that your rent is set to where it's not going to eat up too much of your profitability. So that's kind of from your fixed cost perspective, making sure your rent's good and your debt service isn't crazy. We look at the financials, some form of the financials every day. So whether it's the back of house reporting that Synergy Suites provides, that's our back of house performance, back of house software. We're looking at that on a daily basis, comparing, KPIs with digital sales, and most recently, digital sales have been a big driver in profitability loss. So we do that on a daily basis, and then we look at P&Ls on a monthly basis, and then we look at those quarterly. We look at them annually, semi-annually. The problem with the P&Ls is they're a lagging indicator. So if it's already 30 days too late as you're looking at those, so you really need to be, even in the individual bank statements, looking at individual things that are happening. What did the labor actually cost? What did our last truck actually cost? Forecasting food costs, food purchases, because you can kind of do a declining budget on your food, even if you don't have an inventory program. And if you do have an inventory program, marry it up with a declining budget on your food. That'll help kind of keep everything in check. So we do that we look at that very tightly. And then most recently, because we have so many locations, we look at repairs and maintenance costs. I don't know if everybody else has been seeing this, but our costs have been going through the roof for repairs and maintenance. Mostly, I think, because during COVID, we had things being repaired with kind of crappy products. So now we're seeing that the HVAC that you replaced 4 years ago needs all this work and things like that. So it's been really expensive. I think we spent $500,000 last year on repairs and maintenance, somewhere very close to that. And we're looking at how do we, maybe what we could do is have a guy that works on the staff, that travels, that just works for us, goes to the individual stores, does preventative maintenance, can have buying power at dealer prices and stuff like that for these these units that can do both the cold, what we call the cold side and the hot side. So work on your equipment, your refrigeration, then also your HVAC. We're thinking that we could probably save some dollars there, but also you never know. So it's it could be one of those mistakes that happens after the next 12 months.
Little trial and error.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
So if I had to summarize, it sounds like there's a lot, like by the time you're reviewing your P&Ls, you're not surprised by what you're seeing because you're looking at it on more of a daily or weekly basis. So you're close enough to the numbers that it's more just confirming what you've already been anticipating at the store level. It seems like
that's true. There's one thing I forgot to mention is we couple all of that with a budget. So we set a budget annually, and it's really if you've never done one, you can basically just do a mock P&L for yourself, and then as those expenses come in, it's hard, right? Because if you say, well, I'll set aside $8,000 or I'll budget $8,000 for the year for repairs and maintenance. And you say it's, whatever, $600 or $650 a month over a budget for a year, but then you have one $4,000 payment. So it's going to look kind of weird on the monthly on a budget. But if you're keeping up with that and you kind of look at it as a snapshot quarterly, you can kind of keep up with another, almost like a leading indicator against your lagging indicator for where you thought you were going to be, where you projected to be, and then treat it like a professional. Like, nope, we didn't budget to have X, Y, and Z, so we're not going to do that this year. We'll put in the budget. We'll assess it next year.
Amazing. All right, what goes into your assumptions when preparing the budget? Is it a flat where this is our goal, we're anticipating X amount percentage of growth each year, or is it more granular, like on the unit level?
Yeah, so that's the hard part, is the growth. Because we're opening new units, is how do you project your overhead needs for your company as you grow? But you got to set aside money with the G&A side of that, right? So we'll open 6 or 7 locations this year. We're going to need, do you need one district manager? If I say we need one DM can oversee 10 locations, and I'm going to open 7. Do I need one? Well, it depends. How many regions is it in? So we know that we have to hire 2 new district managers this year, even though it's only 7 stores, and we budget 10 stores per DM. So it's just being, I think to me, it's just being honest with yourself about what your expenses are, kind of going through all the worst case scenarios. And then I always find it to be like, I'd rather be more conservative on where we need to be with the budget, and then be pleasantly surprised at the end of the year when we shot under it.
Makes sense. How do you, well, you might be at a different spot now, I think, in how you're financing your growth. Is it predictable in the way that it's easy to like, what your debt service is going to be to a certain extent on the ones that you're developing, or is there still some unpredictability there?
No, we know. Yeah, we know. So like, I mean, this is my testament to you guys, but I had a lot of success with the recap and grow product that you all have over the years. I mean, it's really, if anybody on this call does not know about that program, you need to look into it, because it was probably the catalyst that helped me grow from 10 units to 30. That gap right there is extreme. Unless you're already rich, somebody told me the other day, unless you're already born on third base, then you're going to need to figure out the financing part. And so having someone that can refi money for you and pull out the existing equity, like what you guys do, is pretty powerful. So it's very predictable now for me. We switched from using those products on every deal. You kind of got to go back to the well. Every deal with institutional financing, you never know what you're going to get. Versus, or the rates are all constantly changing and things like that. To now we have a really good finance. It's just a different product than what you guys have. It's a finance partner that we have a line of credit with, and we're able to draw off that line of credit, and we know exactly what the interest rate is, and we can put exactly, we're going to open 7 this year. We know exactly what that costs and what that's going to look like as we grow, as we compound that into the year.
Makes it super easy. Yeah. Well, going back to when it wasn't super easy on the financing.
Yeah.
So I'm sure you ran into points in time where lending was more difficult. Either, you went through COVID, so either because of the macro environment, or maybe just you reached your maximum exposure with a certain lender, and you start to hear the phrase "you're growing too fast" from some banks.
Yeah.
I've definitely told a lot of people that in the past.
Yeah.
Um, so when you find yourself with an opportunity for growth, but you keep hitting dead ends on the lending side, how do you like? Have you ever had to take maybe suboptimal or more expensive debt to get something done? And how do you know, like, what considerations do you make to know whether it's a good risk to take and the opportunity cost is worth it, versus not?
Okay, so yes, definitely have taken suboptimal lending. We, I mean, I've done a lot, several that were just suboptimal, and it was because you get the answer like, well, you're growing too fast. You don't have enough. You just bought 5 units, and just before that you bought 3 units, and just before that you bought 4 units or whatever. And so over, like, if you do that within a short period of time, none of it is enough you need it. It's like those sales and that profit has to run to your tax returns in a lot of cases, depending on how many units it is, to demonstrate that to a lender. So we had opportunities. It was just a ripe time for people selling in the brand, and we had opportunities that I didn't want to let go. So we did approach the 100% financers that would do the deal. Really, no questions asked. It was very, very easy to get the money, I would say, at least, but it was expensive. It's expensive money too. So just know that those come with the higher interest and payoff penalties and stuff like that. So we did do that, and the way I look at it is, if it's in a location that's if it's on its own, like, the way I kind of assess it is, okay, I want to buy this location, it's on its own. Should we, I don't have any other infrastructure there, should I take this expensive money to get this new location added to the portfolio, and it's in an area that we don't already have a footprint? To me, that flow chart doesn't really work for our organization. We like to stay lean. We like to, have a footprint in places. Doesn't mean we won't grow in areas, but we got to make sure that financing is buckled up and right and stuff like that. And we project forward and things. But yes, we have taken expensive money, and I try to just assess, is it a good deal? And I mean, to me, it's just kind of it's whatever your risk profile looks like for your organization.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I think you have to take a certain level of risk, obviously, as an entrepreneur. But you said something that made a lot of sense. And I think I heard it right. Is basically don't pair two risks together, right? Like if the loan is expensive, but you're also going into a territory that's unpredictable, or you don't already have a presence, then it's sort of a little bit too much unpredictability versus a region that you're familiar with, that you can do well, and so you can maybe take on a little bit of extra risk on an interest rate or debt service, because you're not sort of doubling down on the risk side of things.
Yeah, that's well said. And the other thing is, like, on the flip side, if I already have 5 locations in a territory and there's another one that just popped up and it's somewhat close to my other stores, I mean, I could really benefit by owning that store long term, especially because maybe they're not doing that good. And if the next operator comes in and starts really improving, maybe it pulls sales from somebody else that's enjoying your location. And now that the other one's fixed, they start going back there. So that would be a scenario where, hey, maybe I would take more expensive money.
Yeah. Do you put a cap, like when you're looking at your your debt service coverage, and when you're looking at your balance sheet, and we talked a lot about budgeting and forecasting, but is there a certain leverage level that you want to stay under in general, like, or are you more looking at debt service coverage and just the monthly payment side of things, or do you
Yeah, so under, as long as, so like with our negative company, we have to be under, I think it's 70%. So 70% of our total cash flow can go to debt service. We try to stay like more like 40%. And it just becomes a lot harder to manage if, like, when you buy a new location, or open a new store. Anybody that's done that, it's like it takes time to book those dollars.
Yep.
So, and then if you have more in the pipeline and you've gotten your coverage ratio to where it's pretty high, it it can just be tight. You have to come out of personal savings to make it all work and things like that.
Yeah, understood.
So we try to save for
With
research.
Okay. Yeah, I guess it makes sense. You have to with how you're financing with the covenants and things like that. What about remodels and things like that? Are you setting aside money, like you said, repairs and maintenance, just in general, you're having a lot more expenses there, but just scheduled forced remodels that you have within the system, are you financing those, or are you setting aside money for those as you know that they come up?
Yeah, so far, fingers crossed, we haven't had that discussion with the brand, although we know it's coming probably within the next couple of years, 2 to 3 years. I also
Mhm.
suspect that from an acquisition standpoint, there's gonna be a lot for sale because it's just possible that the next remodel is gonna be expensive, pretty expensive. So to answer your question, we keep retained earnings. We're not earmarking them specifically for new remodels. My intent is to utilize our line of credit to solve those as we grow. Um, or if it's within the acquisition, lump it into total cost of that acquisition, which which I would assume we get a discount on the location. Even if they're doing 300,000 in profit, let's say they ask for 4x, they're asking for 1.2, it's a $300,000 remodel. My expectation is that the price is 900,000, that
Right.
that you're capturing it there. So
Yep.
um in the value. So you're still in some way it's getting paid for, but it should be captured in the value. But anyway, to answer your question, we're not specifically putting money away, but we do on an annual basis put retained earnings away.
Got it. Makes sense. Um, I've got a couple more questions for you, but there's some that are piling up in the chat, so we'll answer those and then we'll
Okay.
kind of go back. Let me just see. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. One of our attendees wants to know, curious on how you evaluate the equipment, operations, and talent prior to closing on acquisitions.
Yeah, so that's always tough. You can ask for a warranty on an acquisition, a warranty on equipment. It's hard to get, but you can ask for that from the seller. Because one of the things they'll try to say to you is, hey, all this stuff's been repaired. We fixed that. That's good. It's all in good working order as you're asking those questions. And so what you could do is say, hey, I'm going to retain 10% of the sale price for a 6 month period. And then after 6 months, like a performance hold, depending on the price. Like some people selling a single store aren't going to do that. But if you're getting a 5 unit acquisition and you're paying 4.5, like you're paying the top end of the margin, I would ask for that.
Sure.
Especially if you're not sure about the equipment. So that's how I assess. I would expect all of your staff is going to quit. That's just my assessment. That's what we've seen in everyone. And look, I'm a pretty nice guy. We have a nice organization. It seems to not matter. Even if you meet them in person, you shake their hand, you say, "Can't, I'm so excited for you to be on the team." Because the standard is going to be different. It could be worse than their original standard, but because the standard is different, what I found is that people just don't like change, especially at the crew member level, and they tend to quit. So it's unfortunate, but over like the course of about 6 months, it's a full replacement.
Got it.
Um, so it's hard to assess. Like it's always nice if you got really good kids and stuff working in there. That's always like a good sign of the market. But long term, it's not a good sign of who's going to be in the store in the next 6 to 8 months.
Got it. So not right away, but you sort of expect that you're going to have
Yeah.
turnover in the
Yeah,
short.
because like it's like you walk in and not everybody's in uniform, and so you start implementing a uniform standard. Like, hey, guys, this is a job. When you come here, you have to wear your shirt. You need your hat. The things, right? And it could just be simple stuff like that. You can't put a hoodie on the outside that's not branded. It has to be tropical smoothie. I'll buy you one, but you got to wear that.
Right.
It's that kind of stuff, man. People just I don't know why, but they don't like to have to go from not doing something to all of a sudden now there's a change. It can be simple, and then it's always a friction point from what we found.
Yeah, I could see that. Um, okay, this is sort of a completely different topic, but let me just see. I want to make sure I get to all these. Can you talk a little about structure of corporate entity with that many locations? How is your corporate entity structured?
That's a good question. So, this has taken time, but we have myself, the CEO, we have a COO, we have a construction development manager, facilities manager, we have two staff accountants, and we have a catering and event manager that also does marketing for us as well. Um, they all work in the office, although a lot of like our construction development manager travels a lot and things like that. So they all work in the office, and then above, just below that, we have a director of operations who's on the ops side of it. So he reports directly to the COO, and he oversees our district managers. And then our district managers we have in the individual regions, and we have 5 of those. So hopefully that answers your question. But it's kind of like it's hard to know. I know I need a dedicated marketing officer. I know I need to probably add another staff account. It's hard to know like when exactly to do those things.
Right.
But over the course of the years, it'll start to be, I mean, to me, it'll just become obvious. Like people start to get stretched too thin, and you have to backfill in those positions.
Sure. Yeah, it makes perfect sense. And then on the more like on the corporate, on the entity side of things, do you have single unit LLCs that roll up to
Oh
a
yeah.
company, or how do you have, how is that
Yeah,
structured?
so I wasn't sure how to do this at the beginning. So we paid a tax attorney to help us restructure as I was growing. And so what we do is we do individual LLCs with each that owns each location. They're considered disregarded entities, so I think it's a Q election, and then they roll up to our parent, Zenith Investment Group, and that's whatever election you make there, maybe an S election or something like that. But
Mhm.
so the beauty of it is you can do in your accounting software, you can do a class system, so you can see every P&L individually, or together as a group, kind of broken out with the total at the end, but also gives you one balance sheet. The
Okay.
beauty of this is that's like the expensive part of your tax filing is if you have 40 locations that they're filing 40 different tax returns for, that's kind of expensive. So with us, we have, one tax return because it's one balance sheet. And then within that balance sheet or within that tax return, there's also one P&L that shows the individual locations.
Got it. Yeah, that's exactly what they were wanting to have answered. Perfect.
Okay. So good. I mean, that's like that'll save you a lot of money. So I would be willing to pay up front. I mean, I would pay up front for that, even if it means restructuring. Like that's when I think I did this around like unit around 10 or something like that. So we paid to restructure our old ones and then form an entity that would be a housing unit for all the rest of the LLCs. It's a worthwhile investment.
Yeah, absolutely. It gives you flexibility too when selling and things like that.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely.
Um, okay, so more general questions for you. I don't know if these are easier or harder.
Okay.
Um, and you can choose one of these. I don't know if it's easier to speak to mistakes or successes, but when you think about like one impactful thing or decision that you made that either you would never make again, or that just really seemed to be like, if I could just do this on every project, that this was what made me really the most successful. So either one of those things.
I'll do the failures because I've had a lot of those. I would say, well, a couple things. Number one, I paid a big price on this one. Trying to we were trying to save labor, and we approached our crew members and managers with a labor by hour product. We wanted them to make them productive per labor hour, and getting like high school students, it's not their business. They're not getting them to do that versus just follow a percentage of labor as they can kind of look at that over the back of house. We had this whole thing planned. We spent months on it. I mean, we were like, we're gonna save so much money doing this. And then we implemented it with the team, and it was just, I mean, I think we overspent on labor. And this was back when I had like 8 or 9 stores. I think we overspent on labor $150,000 in a quarter. It was like it's just money that didn't go to the bottom line. So and it was when we were getting into our slower season too. So it was a nightmare. So that's really I learned a lesson that those types of products are administrative above restaurant products that you look at to gauge how they're doing performance wise on their percentage labor. So I would say that's one. And then another failure was and maybe it wouldn't be for everybody, at least it was for us. So we went into one of these emerging markets, single location, and the location, again, probably comes to ego or something like that, but the location was it was like in a nice area. The sales were 600,000 or something like that. And we kept telling ourselves, well, we can buy it and improve it, right? I mean, surely the problem is like the owner operator had been there and did a good job for the last 3 years, and he wasn't able to grow the sales. What makes me think I can do it? And I live 4 hours away, and our team, we don't even have a team there. So we bought that store, we sold that store. That was a mistake. If it sometimes real estate is it's just not the right deal. And so you come across those and they look like, hey, that's another unit we can buy. It's relatively cheap, but it'll just cost you money. So anyway, so that was another failure.
Got it. You actually mentioned this, the first one you mentioned as a failure, but I think a lot of the things you spoke to in the beginning, you are now succeeding at this when it comes to culture and like what systems do you have in place for coaching and managing your employees. Like you just spoke about that as a failure, but I think you actually spoke earlier about a lot of things that you've done right in that regard. And one of the questions that we have, they wanted you to elaborate a little bit more on that. And so the question is specifically, how do you develop leadership pipelines internally? What systems have you implemented, i.e. coaching sessions, KPI reviews to reinforce performance across units? So I think they wanted a little bit more to dig in a little bit deeper on that.
Yeah, so it's okay. One of the big things so it kind of starts with Chad, our COO. So we start with the succession and develop. It's like what comes first, chicken or the egg. So I don't know. Maybe this isn't where it starts, but this is how I look at it. So we do a succession and development review every month. And now we ask our district managers to do those. They basically have an Excel spreadsheet. It has every manager that they oversee. We get it as a full report. But it's every manager that they oversee, and within there they'll have your bench, who's on the bench and who's ready to kind of move up to manager. And then is the manager at risk? Are they ready to move up? Like what stage of their progression are they? So we build this into our above restaurant leaders kind of culture where we're saying, hey, everybody that you have on the bench or everybody that you have in a management slot should be eligible to move up. And if they're not, why? Why are they not eligible to move up? Let's hone into that and start digging into why. So when I get the succession development, inevitably there's always 2 or 3 that are at risk within our organization. And my question is, why are they at risk? Well, maybe they're going to move, or maybe they're not, like they're moving out of state or something like that to a location we don't have, or maybe they're just not performing. And so we dig into that, and our pipeline looks like, if you're performing on the metrics that we set, we use it as kind of a scorecard. Beauty of it is everybody sees it pretty much on a daily basis. So it gets updated pretty regularly. Everybody sees everybody's performance. And we do that by just having all of our cafes listed. And then the metrics that you want to see. Comp sales, what are your actual costs versus theoretical costs on cost of goods, your labor, where you're forecasted and where you're actually landing, your blend training. So our training program for the cafe training for the crew. So the percentage of completion and your customer service satisfaction numbers. These are kind of their scorecards. The ones that are underperforming, they typically go on a performance improvement plan. And so this is another lesson I learned a long time ago. If your gut tells you, hey, this person's not the right person, just move on. Don't wait. I mean, it's not, I always try to like be a human about these things too, because I don't want to just fire somebody for no reason. But me personally, I've always waited too long to do these things. So I would say if your gut's starting to tell you, hey, this isn't the right one, then move on. Put them on a performance improvement plan, give them an opportunity to fix it. If they can't, then it's time to kind of move on.
Sure.
So I know that's kind of like just an overview. It's hard to get into details on some of these things without kind of showing what it looks like. But if you come up with things that are important for you, hold people to those standards and then review them on those standards, and then replace them when they're not performing.
Yeah, perfect. I think that that was perfectly explained. And the visibility, I think, is important too, and seems like it helps keep everybody sort of on the same page and working toward the same goal, and motivated. I'd be motivated by that.
Yeah, and so like it's one of those things where you don't want to criticize in public, you know. You want to kind of praise in public, but we just so we don't do that. We don't say, hey, cafe so and so with this manager, you're doing really crappy. We don't put that in the email. We just put the no crap, here's the performance in the email. We have a bunch of shout outs for people that are doing really well, like, hey, these are 100% blend training success, or EcoSure was this, we had 100% on this EcoSure. So we have kind of shout outs.
Mhm.
And what we found is that the shout out, people drive to be on the shout outs.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, like if they're getting shouted out, like those people are putting more money in their pocket because we're sharing above the standard. We're sharing that a portion of that profit with them.
Right. Yeah. Public praise versus public shaming.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
There's another question on real estate. They said real estate is a huge challenge in finding and competing for those ideal locations. What has worked for you in markets that have open space? Is it the agent? Is it stalking ideal locations and hoping for an opening?
Yeah, we've tried everything over the years. I don't know. I don't really have anything that's like the key, at least from my standpoint. If you're not getting much success with the broker, try a different one. We have done that. Like I'll just go drive a market and I'll see if there's things on like sometimes you just see that sign posted in the ground that says build a suit or something like that on a piece of land.
Mhm.
Call those numbers, or have your broker call those numbers, more importantly, because they don't see everything. Like we use the shopping center group here in kind of where I'm at in the southeast. They do a very good job, but also there's things that pop up they just don't know about. So if you see it, I would definitely go after them about it. Um, and I would just be very like your franchisor is not gonna want to hear you say this, but I would be very, very selective of your real estate. I was told this by so the CEO of our bank told me this the other day. He goes, he said, good real estate is free. And I was like, well, I never really thought about that, but when I started thinking about it, he's like, yeah, man. He's like, if you could pay, say you paid $120,000 for this in rent, but if it's doing $3 million in sales, that is essentially a free location. So you get, in his opinion, and I think my opinion is wait to get the good real estate. Don't just jump on a deal because it's going to put money away. That's really hard in the beginning because if you don't have any stores, or if you only have one, you're ready for two. It's really hard to wait. But I think depending on what your goal is, I think being a little bit more cautious about the real estate can pay off.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we see that a lot where it's you are on a specific timeline, or and whether it's fulfilling that with the brand or just your own timeline of where you want to be, and it's sort of good enough, and so you just,
Yeah.
oh, I can make this work. But when where we see struggles is a lot of times it's because of the location. And you can't pick it up and move it.
Yeah, and that's kind of the friction point actually, where from franchisor to franchisee, where look, franchisor is trying to get locations open because their revenue is built on your gross sales. Your profitability is concerning to them, but it's not. At the end of the day, they're going to be okay if you're not profitable.
Right.
So there's kind of it's two different business models, right? So there's kind of this like, there can be this animosity if you're not jumping on real estate, but and it's not your individual real estate kind of managers. Uh, it's not them driving it either. It's their bosses driving it because
Yeah.
they want to get locations open. So anyway, so I just be stubborn. Just be stubborn and make sure you go after the right real estate.
Yeah, I'd agree. It's hard too. One of the comments in the chat was just a massive thank you in all caps, saying
Oh yeah, yeah,
um
my
this is
pleasure.
my gut, but obviously the system wants you to open as soon as possible. But I think
Yeah,
you're right. You can still be stubborn. You don't have to. We're not saying default on your franchise
yes,
agreements.
right, right,
Um, just you're the one putting in the money, so be picky and make
yeah,
sure that you feel right about it.
exactly.
Um, well, we actually, believe it or not, got through all of the questions. I don't think I have any other ones. And for once, we're actually ending on time without a rush of
Nice.
that are backlogged. Um, the one thing that we might have a minute or two to touch on was succession, like exit plan, succession plan, things like that. Like, I don't know if you want to speak for a minute about what your end goal is. How do you see that like panning out? What are you working towards all of this?
Yeah, so I guess I could see an end state being um I don't know, over 100 units, maybe 150. You just never know what can happen though. It could be we could get to 80 and it just be the right time too. Here's what I believe. I think with our brand, there's been a lot of positive momentum um, in the brand to see the kind of comp sales shift much
Mhm.
higher up. And so my plan is to hold and grow for the next 7 years, let's say 5 to 7 years. See this through an increase in AUV, which attenuates to an increase in um, or flows, I should say, to an increase in profit. And then I think if you're going to a private equity company and selling, $30 million worth of EBITDA, we've done a valuation on our company now. What I can tell you is that those types of sales go, depending on the brand, can go from 9 to 11x. So if you can kind of deliver a lot to the bottom line, if you're at 5 to 10, you're probably looking at a 7x, and then it kind of go from there. But you look at like Taco Bell's trade for 9 to 10x,
Right.
so they're a sought after brand. I think with an increase in AUV in our brand, we could see that same momentum. So that's my plan, is to continue to grow, continue to operate well, and then kind of see where the road takes us in terms of multiple.
Awesome. Well, I mean, you're on your way, and now so is everyone who joined this call.
Yeah. Good, good.
They've got the playbook laid out for
There
them.
you go.
Well, listen, thank you, Rylan. You've been excellent. I really appreciate you taking time out of your busy day to
My
join us.
pleasure.
And for everyone on the call, we will send out this recording, like I said, in the next day or two. If you have a question that you didn't get a chance to ask, you can send it to loans@ApplePie Capital, or you can call the number on the screen. And we appreciate you joining us. Hope everybody has an amazing rest of their Tuesday.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.